People are amazed that some people can be, my age and older, 30, and still have some affiliation or still bang or still have some loyalty to these subcultures.
Because what I think a lot of people don't comprehend is the most obvious thing, which is that in the 60s, we still had an economy in this country that valued the strength of an unskilled man. If you were a working class guy, you were tough and loyal and courageous, that meant something in the workplace.
So guys would be in high school and guys would be banging and guys would be kind of messing up. Then they'll get to adulthood, they'll get a kid, and they can pretty much segue into one of those industry jobs.
By the early mid-1970s, semi-skilled jobs were collapsing and disappearing in cities all across the country.
It used to be my father, y'all's fathers, or whatever, whenever people moved here, there was factories.
And now, that shit's closed. Rubber factory's gone, General Motors gone. That's right there in Alameda. Industrial America was right there. You know what I'm saying? That shit died. I saw it die.
The 14 biggest factories in LA closed in the late 70s, early 80s, and stripped away the hopes of a whole generation of people. You have to imagine how the history of LA would be different today if those plants still existed. With the collapse of those factories, you lost the workplace as an organizing base.
I seen the man across the street from me lose his job. I seen the people down the street lose their job. I seen uncles, cousins, and lose their job, right?
The reason that supposedly young black men, desert families is they can't earn a family wage to support a family. One of the great racist myths in this country is the death of the black family or the non-existent black family. And people trace this back to slavery. Black Americans have never had family structures. I mean, there's not a more obnoxious, or misleading myth around. If you actually look at the figures, the collapse of the black family occurs in the 1970s and occurs in direct proportion as, young black men are just systematically shut out of the labor market.
So there go the jobs that we probably was going to be going after once our parents became supervisors up in that shit and probably would have pulled us in. They lost it.
Bone, if you had 50,000 unionized warehouse jobs, you could turn probably 50,000 gang members into industrial workers overnight. And if gangs are pathological, they're also heroic in a way. They do, or at least did in one period, embody values of self-sacrifice, of loyalty to people, and love above all.
With the jobs leaving, I think what it did, it expanded like the subculture world as being like your total world.
Gangs somehow carried on, a residue of the unity and pride, but it was now narrowly focused and wasn't the whole community anymore. It was a particular street. But it has to be understood against the context of just the devastation, the destruction of the economic opportunities.
Drug dealers always say, you got to make a choice. You're going to be a slinger or a banger. What you going to do? And that was like the 70s thing. But once the 80s came, it was like, man, we got to do them both. I'm sure my story is no different than most of the cats throughout Los Angeles. I don't think no one intends to grow up to be a drug dealer. It just blew up, man. Neighborhoods became rich, you know what I mean? The rolling 60s became the rich rolling 60s because they were having so much money over there. So, now you have millionaires, and you have 2 or 3 millionaires in 4 or 5 different neighborhoods. So imagine, you got a gang member, 200,000 or 300,000, you got one with $1 million, and you guys all in the same set. You could do anything just about you wanted to, you know what I mean? We wouldn't go steal a car to go do a shooting, we would go buy one. It was like one summer, everybody had drugs, everybody had cocaine, all my partners, all my friends. But so why didn't that happen more so in the 70s as I was coming up like, 11, 12 years old?
A couple of things happened in the 1980s. First of all, the drug business went from being a mom and pop business where they shipped cocaine, a kilo here and a kilo there, to being a mass production, huge, vertically integrated business.
Crack economy became, the one re-employer.
Yeah.
They're the only ones who were willing to hire, black youth.
There's no way you can get money in a dead community. Then they give you the option, sell this. Well, you have one of 2 options. Go to church and pray. Or sell it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
The drug problem is colorblind. While it's portrayed in much of America as being a black inner city problem, if it were a black inner city problem, there wouldn't be all the traffickers here because there's not enough money in the inner city to make it worth their while. The suppliers from overseas see the people in the inner city as people who are very eager to do the marketing, because there's a big pool of talent there that is unemployed, underemployed, and boy, if nobody else wants to use them, these guys certainly know how to get in and make use of them.
I've always been told that drugs were coming into our community by outside forces. How did that come about?
The same flood of drugs that was coming into Miami in the mid-'80s was coming into Los Angeles at the same time, and a lot of that was coming through Mexico. There were gangs in Mexico that were supplying it. There were also other gangs from Latin America that were bringing the drugs up here. And one of those gangs, I have no doubt, was the one associated with the Contras.
Running the dope was not to destroy black people. It was to fund the war in Central America, okay? Congress did not give them money, so they had to raise the money. So they bring the drugs into the inner city and bleed us of every dime we have. Then with our money from drugs, they buy the arms in Iran and then run on down to Nicaragua and have their war. Pick up the dope and bring it back to Los Angeles, get you to sell it.
There were clandestine airstrips. There were airplanes who were flying in and out to supply the Contras. Those airplanes are coming up to the United States. They're empty. These guys know they can come and go. Nobody's going to ask any questions. And in a way, they're getting their ticket punched because they're working and helping the government. Now, with that kind of flood of cocaine, things really got out of control. But you would never in 1,000 years find employees of the federal government who sat down and said, we're going to sell drugs in South Central to raise money so we can fight the war in Nicaragua. That's preposterous.
Maybe they didn't say it, but maybe what about looking the other way? It's just as bad. Because they had to know what's going down.
There's no question they looked the other way. And they would say, hey, that's not my job.
Even took this issue to Congress, and they call it Iran-Contra. They never got to the bottom of it.
The investigation that I ran 10 years ago had witnesses that said we looked the other way. We put that all out on the table publicly. Nobody paid any attention to it.
That shit really intensified the war. I mean, so it just really just blew the whole thing way out of proportion and made it more deadly and way more violent than it had been. So the drug trade enhanced the firearm capability.
Right, and it funded the arms race. I remember getting out of YA, and going up to Western Surplus and seeing an AK for $250 and a box of shells to go with it for $2. So if I'm standing out there in the drug trade making $1,500 to $3,000 a day, I can go buy a gang of these AKs straight across the counter. There's no grace period here. You might have a homie that might got 6 AKs because he just feeling like that. You know what I'm saying?
Once the drug trade hit, like I said, it mobilized us. We started getting out of the neighborhood because we got cars, we got money. We started trying to go where normal mainstream civilians went. And that would be like Westwood, Magic Mountain, Disneyland, all the American dream stuff. We would try to detach ourselves from our ghetto lifestyle and our ghetto world. I see my enemy in Westwood, or I see my enemy in Hollywood where I'm trying to go to the movies. And that was because the Crips had the same idea. Once they got money, hey, let's get out the ghetto, let's get off the block. As long as we were killing each other in our own little backyard from 1969 up to 1985 or 86, whatever it was, when we started getting out of our neighborhoods, it was okay. But the minute our mess spilled over into the next man's living room or the next man's neighborhood, that's when the police said, oh, hell, we got a gang problem.
The words crime and war on drugs, in effect, had a political agenda attached to them. And what we're going to do is we're going to be tough on those black people.
They responded with Crash, Operation Hammer.
We're going to wage a war. There are a lot of faint-hearted people in this nation. We keep talking about a war on drugs. We don't have a war on drugs, never have had a war on drugs, but we do have a war here on gangs.
Gang members cannot continue selling drugs in this community without a Los Angeles police officer standing over them, hitting them with a hammer.
That's what they do not have now, is any fear. And we want to create that fear in their minds.
The war is on, huh?
The war is on, no question about it.
This is just one effort in this whole struggle that we're in to obliterate the gangs in the city of Los Angeles.
That was not Crips they were after. They were after black people.
Operation Hammer was both a kind of Vietnamization of police repression in LA, introducing these mass sweeps, just like, strategic operations in Vietnam, round up all the peasants, but in this case, round up all the black youth in this theory. and at the same time generalizing this theory about the hardcore juvenile offender and applying it to every black youth in the city.
These were not criminals, and these were not gang members. These were just ordinary people, and many of them spent time in jail. Okay, this is a harassment that is the prelude to even going to jail and the building of the jails now.
That's the new prison they're building right across the street from the project.
Now what's happening in California is really, a holocaust of a generation, putting an entire generation of people into prison. And so you're left with this weird situation where perhaps one part of the black community, part of the black middle class, is found unprecedented mobility. But I think for, many, many working class, African Americans, this is a moment of incredible peril. It's in some ways comparable to the 1890s and the grip of Jim Crow. But now it's the prisons that are, designed no longer to rehabilitate or even particularly to punish. That's not the point. It's of human storage, warehousing a whole stratum of people that we no longer need, in the American economy.